evening, everyone. Good evening. Thank you. I appreciate that. Welcome to Network and Chill. This is going to be an extraordinary evening. It's going to be intimate and quaint, but that means what? You all are going to have plenty of questions as you listen to this evening's fireside chat, and I appreciate you. Babe, come on up. So let me first explain. I am Lori Holt. I am a founder as well of a management consulting firm, but that's not my purpose here tonight. My purpose is to keep the evening moving. I'm going to be your MC, and I have some housekeeping and some other stuff to go through if you guys are okay with that before we get started. Is that fair? All right. So how many of you are familiar with Network and Chill? Very familiar? Like I need to tell? Okay, good in the back. But for those of you who aren't, let me give you a little bit of flavor. So Network and Chill is more than a networking event. It's a catalyst for innovation and collaboration in our vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystem. This evening is designed to do three things: foster meaningful connections among visionaries, innovators, and business leaders, provide a relaxed environment where ideas can flow freely, and showcase the incredible talent and potential within the local business community. The importance of Networks and Chill cannot be overstated. In today's fast-paced business world, the connections we make and the community in which we build are often the keys to success. This event serves a crucial platform for sharing knowledge and experiences, discovering potential partnerships and collaborations, and inspiring the next generation of entrepreneurs. But we cannot do this without giving thanks to our sponsors. So I need you all to be loud and proud and very inviting and welcoming for our sponsors, because without them, a lot of these things could not be possible. So, Heaven Hill Brands. Passport by Molina. Community Foundation of Louisville. Louisville Public Media. And I need to call a special shout out on this one. So you all were informed that the Muhammad Ali Center suffered a small incident with a small fire that happened in the adjacent parking lot. We want to say a shout out to our CEO of the Muhammad Ali Center, Devon Holt. But this sponsor made this possible because, as you know, anytime you're having an event and we have pretty awesome people with an amazing speaker, you got to pivot on a dime. So Startup Week Louisville, thank you. Thank you for providing space today for us to do a quick pivot and get over here so that we could have this wonderful evening for you all. So a shout out, hands up for Startup Week Louisville. These organizations are not just sponsors, they are pillars of our community. Their support goes beyond financial contribution. They are investing in the future of our local economy and the dreams of countless entrepreneurs. By backing events like Network and Chill, they are fueling innovation and creativity in our business ecosystem. They are providing resources and opportunities for startups and small businesses. And they are strengthening the fabric of our entrepreneurial community. Your support is making a tangible difference, and we are profoundly grateful. So let me introduce the man of the hour. I know, big deal. Like, he's a big deal, and if you haven't read his book, I'm sure you're waiting to pick it up. So we'll just call it square on that. So it is my great pleasure to introduce our guest for the evening, a true visionary in the world of entrepreneurship, Stacy Spikes. Stacy is best known as the co-founder and CEO of MoviePass, a groundbreaking subscription service that revolutionized the way people experience cinema. But his journey doesn't stop there. Stacy is also a successful film producer and marketing executive, the founder of Urban World Film Festival, one of the largest international film festivals focused on minority content, a passionate advocate for diversity and inclusion in the entertainment industry. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you. Stacy's entrepreneurial journey is a testament to the power of innovation and perseverance. His insights on disrupting industries, overcoming challenges, and building community-focused businesses are sure to inspire us all. Please join me in giving Stacy a warm round of applause. Next, Network and Chill. So I've had the pleasure over the past half year, for you all who are aspiring entrepreneurs or founders or just thinking about it. So before we dive into our main event, I'd like to take a moment to recognize the visionaries behind Network and Chill. Please welcome our co-founders Chris Redd and Ricky Mason. I'll scoot out of the shot. They saw a need in our community for a networking event that goes beyond exchanging business cards. They envisioned a space where, entrepreneurs could connect on a deeper level, ideas could be shared in a relaxed, they're moving stuff, a supportive environment, the next big collaborations and innovations could take root. And they do just that. They're always thinking of people that were like them once upon a time in the people that they serve, which is you. Their dedication to fostering a thriving entrepreneurial ecosystem in our city is truly inspiring. Let's give them a round of applause again for bringing us together tonight. And now, let's kick off this evening's event full of connection, inspiration, and innovation. Enjoy Network and Chill, everyone.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight. Tonight we are joined by Stacy Spikes, and he's more than it's an innovative visionary. He has reshaped how we think about movies. His story isn't just about success. It's about resilience, reinvention, and the power of being an outsider. And thank you, Stacy, for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me.
As we get started, kind of want to start at the end in a sense before we kind of get into the full story of everything. Really take me back to that point, January 2018. And probably one of the lowest points of your journey. And for those who haven't read the book, Stacy was let go of MoviePass through email, might I add, and no longer the CEO of the company that you started. Can you take us back to that moment and maybe walk us through initially what was going through your head and how you overcame that?
You're like starting at the funeral. It's like, well, first, I want to thank Chris and Ricky for having me. It's really an honor to be here. And just the excitement and the joy and the enthusiasm that we've seen since last night and today and even while we were here is really exciting. So I'm honored to be able to be here and come and share a little something if you're an entrepreneur or you are in the role of helping or culture building, whatever little things we've done to be able to make that possible. It really means a lot to be able to be here and help support. So, plus they threatened me if I didn't come, they'd come up and get me. Okay, so yeah. So a little backstory. I'll set it up a little bit for those of you who don't know. So, me and my co-founder founded MoviePass, and the idea was let's make Netflix for movie theaters. And a lot of people didn't know it was two black founders, and so we were going along. And like all founders' dreams, we had gotten an exit, and we have a private equity group who was going to buy the company. After they made the announcement, the company was valued nearly $500 million. And one thing that they wanted to do was drop the price from around $30 down to $9 or $10 where Netflix was. But we all know the average movie ticket, and you're telling people you can go to the movies all you want, and they want to just take $10 a month. And I'm like, you can't do that. So instantly, 100,000 people signed up for the service in 48 hours. And then we started growing 250,000 every month. And I kept saying, guys, this is not sustainable. So from July to January, we had broken through 1 million people. And at that time, they were sick and tired of me saying, this isn't going to work. And they felt I shouldn't be a member of the team. And they graciously, through email, fired me from my own company and kicked me off the board, which is that wonderful moment he's talking about. So just a little setup of how the patient got in the casket, but Don't worry, this is a Lazarus story. We'll get back to that.
So, there you go. All right. But, okay, Lazarus story. But at that moment, let's talk through, we had some conversations last night, and I think that Lazarus story is important to set the stage of obstacles, right, and overcoming. Many entrepreneurs in this room today are building a business, and it can feel lonely, it can feel very deserted, right, and it can be left behind, right? And part of that story is like you were able to go past that, right? What did you do just in that moment of like, maybe mental health? Like, how do you just overcome that moment to continue as an entrepreneur? Because many in the room right now are, he said, are you going to keep going or are you going to give up?
So immediately that moment, I was sitting at my desk. I got up and went and said bye to everyone in the company, and people were crying and really, shook up. This is Tuesday after Christmas. This is like the first week back. And they're just cowards. They sent me an email. I was like, y'all should have came and talked to me in person, I wanted to be arrested or something. Just sent me. I think they sent me an email because they knew they shouldn't be in my sight. So anyway, I called my wife. I went home. I think I was in shock. And the first thing I did was I went to the movies. And I live in the West Village in downtown Manhattan. And this is how I knew something was different. I walked to the theater, and it was maybe at this point 12, 1, lunchtime. And I went in the theater, and the theater's not really full. And there's maybe 5 people in the theater, and there's this one young brother sitting in the seat right in front of me, and you can kind of see through the seats. And he goes, "Are you Stacy Spikes?" And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Man, thank you for everything you've done. I'm really proud of you." Now, I just got fired. And I wasn't going to tell this man, like, "Thank you, brother, I just got," but it was, to me, it was like God saying, you're going to be okay. I got you. I know what I'm doing. Just hang on. And then a day or two later, I don't know why, but I went and read the book of Job. And I thought, in the story of the book of Job, I know I don't have to tell anybody about the book of Job, but if you don't know the story, it's the oldest book in the good book. And it's this bet has happened between God and the devil. And the devil has said, if you take this hedge you have around Job and this beautiful life you've given him, I bet you I will break him and make him curse you. And God and the angel says, give it your best shot. And they bet heaven on this. And I thought, what if my people, my industry, the people that believed in me are looking at me as Job in this moment? How am I going to act as I walk through this? Will I be a man of dignity and grace? Will I be a man who can walk through this and not end up in the bottom of a bottle or at the end of a needle, or stuff that happens to people who lose everything from ill-gotten gains that wasn't your fault? And so I read Job, and I thought, well, what if I'm in that story? They write these stories down as roadmaps for when you're lost and you don't know what to do. And then I went upstate and I sat with monks in a monastery because I felt I had to now go into spiritual warfare. Like, I had to have my mind right. And those were the things, within the first week, those were the things I did. And I said a lot of prayers for people I didn't want to pray for. So.
I mean, I think I heard you say last night that you lost, 80 million, over that course of that transaction. And if I'd have lost 80 million, I'd have been ready to kill somebody. So, I mean, you needed something.
I would, it was like you would flip between, I'm going to go pray for them. Oh, fuck no. I'm going to go pray. Oh, hell no. It was like, I mean, there was this guy in the middle of the night who would wake up and sound like me, saying stuff that he wanted to go do to these people. And luckily I had enough people around me who were like, brother, it's going to come back. Like, just, you know, they didn't take away what you use to make all of these things. So go make something else, you know, and just couldn't see how the grand design was going to unfold. But, oh yeah, there was some testing moments in there that I was not spiritually fit.
So, and that takes us right back to a good point. So with MoviePass, you know, what did you actually build that was unique and special with the company that, you know, they didn't know how to use or they didn't know what they had that allowed you to come back and be successful?
So, me and my co-founder had several patents in our name. It's going to sound funny, some of what I'm going to say from 2012 is old hat now, but back then, you couldn't, so I'm gonna use some terminology, but hopefully everybody can keep up. If you go to Target or you go to any type place, they have what's called a closed loop system. The money can only be used at a Target, right? It's closed loop. Then you have credit cards that you can just use them wherever MasterCard is accepted, kind of thing. But they never had anything in between that would allow you to have a MasterCard in a closed loop system that you specify. So what we were able to build was the ability to say, I'm going to identify all of these movie theaters, I'm going to create my own universe, and then I'll only unlock these universes. And the way we had to do it was use your phone to geolocate where you were, and it would unlock. So we had to create, did anybody remember the company Foursquare back in the day? Okay, so Foursquare was, you'd go to a club, you'd check in, and you'd unlock and get some extra points and maybe a coupon or discount. So we kind of used part of that technology, that idea, but we needed a card payment system. And here's the other part that was mind-blowing. The banks only updated the closed loop system twice a day, 2 a.m. and 2 p.m. So you couldn't do real-time transactions on a debit card. So what I wanted to be able to do was say, this person just walked into a theater, I don't want to put money on their card, but when they check in, I want to load funds. If they don't spend it in 15 minutes, take the funds back off, right? And I need to do it that it's secure, that they can only use it there and they can't go to the gas station and they can't go to Chipotle. So all of that I just described, we had to put in an app and make it work in less than 60 seconds, and you didn't even realize what was happening. That's the tech we had to build from scratch in these behemoth industries that didn't even have this technology. So our patent, our business patent, allows us to use geolocation to unlock a payment in real time and then retrieve it back off without, so it sends a behind the scenes authorization, but it's all happening at lightning speed and you don't even know it's happening. So we built all of that from scratch. FinTech.
Yeah. No, I love that, Stacy, and it's such a great point of just, you know, how innovation happens. But I think it's important, you know, setting the stage and kind of knowing, you know, like you said, the funeral, right? But what's the creation? Like, you know, talk to us about Stacy growing up and maybe your love for film, entertainment, and really how your career catapulted the idea for MoviePass.
So I think I was 11 or 12. I grew up in Houston, Texas. I was a geek. I read comic books, sci-fi, thought I was going to grow up and be an astronaut, going to go to Mars, do all this other stuff. And I saw Blade Runner, the first Blade Runner. And like I said, it was a rated R film. I begged my dad to go. My dad fell asleep in the theater. He was snoring through the movie. But that movie, seeing that changed my life, the flying cars. And it wasn't this kind of, oh, I know that's a little model that they use. It all felt really real. And Ridley Scott had directed Aliens, and this was the second film behind Aliens. And it was just, I just said, whatever that is, I want to do that. Whether it's on the screen, behind the screen, whatever, I want to do that. And I moved to Los Angeles when I graduated from high school because of that. And I got into the industry, and I got really lucky, you guys. I believe luck is a lot to this story. But I ended up getting an internship at Motown. So Berry Gordy had sold Motown to Universal. And this product manager got fired because he was selling cutouts, that's the early advance copies, at a swap meet on the weekend. And the CEO came around the corner and he's like, new releases. And he gets busted. And so there was this sudden opening. So I went into Gerald Busby's office and I'm like, Gerald Busby, my name is Stacy Spikes and I'd like to be a product manager, and if you give me a chance, I will not disappoint you, sir. You know, that was my, and he's like, who are you? And he says, go down the hall, I'll tell him to give you a chance, but if you screw up, you're fired. And the first group I got to be Boyz II Men's product manager. And they had just had Motown Philly, and so all the product managers wanted Stevie Wonder and Diana Ross and the big names. But this was Michael Bivins and his groups, and I was like, what's this Biv 10 stuff? And Motown Philly dropped, and it was taken off. And then I came on the project right when they dropped End of the Road. And that changed my life. And so both of my parents went to Grambling, and so I was supposed to go to Grambling. And I told them I was taking the summer off. I got this internship. I'm like, I'm not leaving. and I stayed, and then next thing you know, so I was 19, and I was lying about my age. I had interns that were 24, right, who were in college. And so I was lying about my age. I'm like, I'm 25. Where'd you go to school? You know, and I tried to grow a little mustache that didn't work, and we're dressing up in suits. And long story short, by the time I was 21 years old, I was in the Hollywood Reporter for 30 Under 30. I had Boyz II Men. I had Eddie Murphy. I had Queen Latifah. I had done Spike Lee's soundtracks. I did Do the Right Thing and Jungle Fever. And I was 21 years old. And I'm 3-4 years out of school. But that's what I mean. I was just right place at the right time. I didn't write End of the Road. I didn't even sing on it. But somehow people thought, well, whoever's Boyz II Men product manager, he's got the Midas touch. Hire him. And then I went to Sony, and I did the first Bad Boys soundtrack. And so we had so we broke Elvis Presley's record for longest weeks at #1 with End of the Road. We were 52 weeks, full year, and the only thing that holds 53 weeks is Whitney Houston's I Will Always Love You. Anyway. So I then go to Sony. I do Bad Boys, and at Bad Boys we had the #1 single, we had the #1 video, we had the #1 soundtrack, and we had the #1 movie all at the same time. And it made Martin kind of stayed where Martin is, but Will became Will. Like, that film changed his destiny. And I, met Will and Martin and Simpson and Berkheimer, and so I kept having these leaps forward, and then Miramax called me, and they wanted me to be the vice president of marketing. And I said, of music? They're like, no, of film. And so I was the youngest in film distribution, and I was the only person of color, like anywhere. You look around. I used to go to Sundance, and we used to call ourselves the raisins in the milk. It's like, and so as I'm at Miramax and I'm helping, I started Urban World because I saw when you go to the festivals, we just weren't at the table. And you would see, I remember they premiered Love and Basketball, but like there was just no work. And you got to remember, we have Arsenio Hall show at this time. We've got Vibe magazine. Vibe just bought Rolling Stone. Like, and hip hop culture is huge. And yet you go to all of the film festivals and we're nowhere to be seen. I'm like, how's this? Queen Latifah just did Set It Off. Did you guys remember Set It Off? Come on, right? So anyway, so all of this is happening, and I went to Sundance to say, I think you guys should show more works by people of color. And Jeff, who was the head of Sundance at the time, said, well, if there was better movies, we'd show them. And I was like, according to who? Who's picking them? So I got a resentment, and I went to Vibe magazine. I said, let's start a film festival together. Let's make the Black Can Film Festival. And we ended up doing a test. And what we did for that test was we showed Set It Off at Vibe Music Seminar, and it was crazy. And when she's in the Impala and that last scene, cats lost their minds in the theater. This is why I love cinema so much. Go see Set It Off with the room full of black people. And it was beautiful. And so we had the premiere, and then the next year we launched Urban World. And Urban World is the largest minority film festival in the world. Directors that have come out of it, Ava DuVernay. Ava used to be my publicist. So Ava was our publicist, Tim Story, Malcolm Lee, lots of other directors, and I'm almost there. He asked me, he loaded up a bunch of questions, and I got to make this journey. So when we were doing that, we were noticing there still wasn't a lot of distribution for films. So we had this huge community, and what we decided was we were going to charge a subscription fee, and we knew the number of members, if we just got a few thousand people, we could afford to put one movie out a month in at least 5 markets. That was the idea of what became MoviePass. So it was, we can just help these films and do 12 a year, get them some distribution. They own their rights, but the subscribers pay to make sure they get in these theaters. And then as we were making the app, somebody said, you're making Netflix for movie theaters. And it suddenly was like, why are you just doing these films when you can do all films? And that's how MoviePass came to be.
Long 5 minutes.
No, man. I think that, even telling that story, you skipped over a lot of the resilience, and we talked about the funeral, but how you built up your muscle to resurrect from that death. But can we walk us through a little bit of that? Is how did you build up that muscle? During that time, you talked about Motown, being at October Films, and working with those difficult bosses. Because I think that's one of the things that we often all deal with as we're matriculating through our careers, is how do we, deal with and maintain our reputation, our name in the black book when we're dealing with difficult people as we're navigating through our careers.
That is a great question. You've heard the term another level, another devil. If you're parking cars, it's going to be the guy who's your boss parking cars. If you then work at a restaurant, if you then work at a chain, right? There's somebody up above you that you're stressing them if you don't give them what they want to make them look good. And that crap rolls downhill. And so the music and entertainment industry is full of crazy people. Craziest people you've ever met. And I'm going to tell you a very brief story about my very first day at Miramax. And this is in the book. So I get hired I'm going to start at Miramax, and this is in its heyday. They've done Pulp Fiction, and they're winning all the Oscars, and everything's going great. It is my first day. And we're in the marketing team and PR team would meet, and right off the elevator, there's a conference room, and on both sides of the table, there's about 5 and 5 seated, and no one sat at either of the ends. And so all of a sudden, we're chit-chatting, and then the elevator doors open, and you know how when you're in a park and all of a sudden a hawk is in the air and the pigeons just freeze? Everybody just froze. And so Bob and Harvey come in. Bob goes to one end, Harvey sits at the other end, and Harvey starts, how much money did you make us this weekend, right? And they start the meeting, and they're like, well, Bob, and we did this, and I'm just looking at them. Just a few minutes ago, these were smiling, happy people, and suddenly they're like, And see, I came from an all-black company at this point, right? So I don't get this. And so, cause you walk in, and even the CEO, what's up? How y'all doing this week? Y'all have a good weekend? You good? You know, and you get down to business, and it's a little rough, but you know, we hold each other accountable. But you're like family, cause you know, if you're an all-black business, you're up against the world. And I came from like Motown. There was a pride there, and you treated everybody with respect, and you said hello. These brothers walked in, was like, what did you have? So I'm sitting there. And so Bob goes, did you get the trailer done this weekend? Says to one of them, yes. And this little shaky intern comes in and puts the tape in the deck and runs out the room. And they press play. And Bob says to me, hey, new guy, what do you think? And I look around, you know, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. So I go, I think it's pretty good. And Bob goes, it sucks! That's the worst goddamn trailer I've ever seen! Sucks! Are you an idiot? Did we hire an idiot? Harvey goes, Stacy, are you an idiot? That sucks. How could you not tell? Bob, I think you're right. We hired an idiot. I've been at the company for 5 minutes. This is my first day, and my boss who hired me sitting they're like looking down. They won't even make eye contact. And I'm like, I come from blackness. I'm like, who are you talking to? Let's go. Like, I'm from Houston. It's like, and Mark kind of was kicking me under the table, kind of like, I'm like, okay, yeah. So we got past the first day, and they're like, listen, this is how you get along. You know, you just don't look them in the eye. I'm like, yeah, I don't know that that's going to work. And so a few months later, Bob calls me into his office one day and says, one of his minions said, Bob needs to see you right away. I go in there, and Bob's got his briefcase open, and he's behind, and I just hear pharmaceuticals in this briefcase and bottles, and he's not even looking over, and he goes, what have you done for me today? And I go, well, we're working on train spotting, and we got this and this and this. And he says, what radio station is that going to be on in New York? I said, I got the list on my desk. I'll go get it. He goes, you don't know? I go, it's on my desk. You don't know? Get out of my office. You disgust me. So I leave, and I decide I'm going to murder Bob Weinstein. I'm not making this up. I call one of my boys, and I said, this is a true story. I meant all seriousness. I said, I can't take it, and I made these guys hurt too many people. I watch people need therapy after these guys, and I'm taking Bob out, and I'm gonna go in the office. He says, what are you gonna do? How are you gonna do it? I'm gonna go stab him with my big pen. And he goes, really? I'm like, yeah. And he says to me, he says, have you had lunch today? It's like 3 o'clock. And I said, no, what does that have to do with anything? He goes, I tell you what. See, after you stab Bob, they're going to take you to central booking. And see, you're not going to get to eat till the next day. And so you should probably get a sandwich on your stomach before you do all of this. So why don't you go get a sandwich, get your soda and some chips, and, you know, go handle your business. So I'm here to say that a sandwich and some chips saved Bob's life. Because I was done. I was like, they're going to give me an award for killing him. But so how do you get your resilience? I didn't make it. It was forced upon me through just assholes. And really, the reason I wanted to start I'm like, I can't work for people. If this is normal, you can't. I was like, and every day you go in and you're a paycheck away from being broke. I was like, when I got to Miramax, after my time at Miramax, do you know I had grossed more than $3 billion in sales on just my projects? And I had no money. When I was at Sony, I had a big-ass Sony TV. I had speakers. I had a Mercedes. You guys, I was a check away from being broke. I didn't have stocks. I didn't have ownership. And Gerald Busby told me, don't stay anywhere more than 4 years unless you own stock in that company. And that was the beginning of my title in the book. It was about ownership. We worked hard, but we never had a seat at the table. And I was an indentured servant, and they could talk to me any way they want because I was afraid I couldn't pay my mortgage. And so so you were forced to deal with it, but finally you just break free and you say, that's it, I'm done, I'm not going back. You know, I'm gonna make this happen on my own. I'd rather be my boss than you be my boss. So.
Yeah, that's a great story of you just, you know, like you said, navigating difficult situations and also like navigating being the only one in the room, right? And many times there's founders that are the only one in the room. And so kind of piggybacking on just that conversation of resilience, also during your time, you've had these opportunities where you've had some incredible mentors that help you get to the next level. So talking about being the only one in the room and mentors, how have you navigated building relationships, cultivating relationships, and really appreciating those relationships to get you to the next level?
You know, I've been blessed to have people along the way take you under their wings. And one of the first ones was this gentleman named Oscar Fields at Motown. And Oscar, you know, we grew up, we weren't poor, but you kind of knew enough to get by. And I'll never forget, we went to a restaurant, and it was the first time that there were 3 forks and 3 knives. I had never been any place other than where there was 1 fork and 1 knife. And I remember looking across the table at Oscar, and Oscar did this motion. He said, did it in such a subtle way, but what he signaled was start at the outside and work your way in. And you're starting with, you know, this is a 3, and if you've ever really been to a nice place, they have 5 courses where you will have 5 and 5. Never knew what that meant. And then Oscar just started to take me everywhere, introduce me to people, explain things to me. He talked about how you tip people. He said, do you know the doorman's name? Do you know his or her family? Do you know, where they come from? What do you know about them? Oscar would talk to the guy who parked the car and the CEO of whatever, whether it was Michael Bivins, as if they were the exact same people. And he taught me how to treat everybody with respect, because see, there's times you don't know who someone's destined to become, and you are helping them get there. And they also, like Ava, who you all know as Ava, when we hired her as our publicist to work on the festival, I was there when Ava was sitting in the theater and said, I really want to direct a film. And I said, well, Ava, make a short. You have a film festival to show it at. I said, be here by next year with your film. Ava made a film. Now, I know that, but you don't know that. But just helping somebody with her dream of wanting to be more than just a publicist set her on a different destiny, you know. She went to Sundance and was the first woman, black woman, first-time director who won Best Picture and Best First-Time Director all at the same time, ever in the history of the festival. And so mentoring is giving back, and you have to know how to give back in order to receive and be part of that cycle, because your giving is someone's receiving, and that loop can't happen unless somebody's doing it. And so guys like Oscar and others really taught me that, and I think that's a very rich heritage that we have, is we had this language of giving to one another. You know, and we get a lot of crap about our communities, but there is a loveliness that you go to a family cookout and want to know where the macaroni and cheese is, and it's just lovely, right? No matter where you are. And that's what we come from. And so these guys took me under their wings, and they showed me how to move, and they told me, you need to be able to move in a black and white world. You need to be able to do this and go take off your shirt and shoes and go play basketball, right? You need to be able to walk with kings and commoners in a very fluid way, and they taught me that.
So Stacy, talk about how you took that mentorship and launched MoviePass, and the journey from, you know, you and Hamad coming together through Mitch and Lo coming in.
So I was running around town for 5 years for those founders in the audience trying to raise money. 5 years, and I had grossed $3 billion, and with my track record for 5 years, I tried to, Netflix for movie theaters, how hard is that as an idea, right? It's easy. And 5 years, I couldn't raise any money. Theaters said no, studios said no. Venture capital said, well, if you approach the theaters and you approach the studios and they don't want to do it, why should we do it? If you don't have their help, how is it going to work? Everybody said no. And then Hamay was at Upfront Ventures, which is a large venture firm out of Los Angeles. And I was talking to Will Smith's company, and they rejected me. But Guy Primus, who was the COO there, Guy said, do you know Hamay? And I was like, well, I knew who he was, but we had never talked. And Hamay and I got on the phone, and we're like finishing each other's sentences. And he says, I can raise $1 million in a month. You know how many times people said that to me? I would have been just rolling with bank for all the times people had said that. So I'm like, yeah. And he says, if I can raise $1 million in a month, can we be partners? I said, sure. He said, 50-50. I said, 60-40. And we shook, and then he raised $1 million in a month. 500 from AOL Ventures, which likes subscription companies. And he raised another 500,000, which he was an EIR at True Ventures. And I learned so much from Hamay about there is a language. Some of you, a couple of you, I've spent a little bit of time talking to you about your businesses and certain words. Venture capitalists have a language. They care about what you're doing, and then they don't care about what you're doing. They just want to know how you're going to get to billion-dollar status, how long it's going to take, and clarity you have of thought. And I used to go in and say, I was a movie executive, and I know how to get us money. And I would walk in and tell them about me. Hamay walked, and this was a masterstroke. Hamay walks into the AOL meeting, and it's Mike Brown. Mike was our first check. And they shoot the shit for a second, and then Mike says, and this is the whole conversation, Mike says, what's the terms? And Hamay goes, we're raising 5 on 25, and you can be the first check. And who else is in? We got people lined up for this. It's hot. What's your exit? We're going to get acquired by Netflix or blah, 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 blah. How long can you, before you can get to billion dollars? 5 years. Okay, I think we can do this. Like, they were done, and he just gave him some simple KPIs. Mike got the picture in his brain. Netflix for movie theaters, $500 million in 5 years. Okay, I can sell that to AOL. And he went in, they wrote a $500 million check. Went to True Ventures, and he told True, AOL's in. And I only got room for another $500,000. You better hurry. I got people calling me for this. And they wrote a check. He had a check in 30 days. And I didn't know how to do that. See, I thought I was the story. Right? And sometimes it is. Sometimes the founder is the story. In this case, that's not what they wanted to buy. And so we went and financed it and got it on its feet and went through a lot of ups and downs and peaks and valleys. And then 5 years in, we got an exit. And that's when Mitch and Ted kind of came in on the scene, and we ended up. But what was beautiful is we raised a total of $10 million. And at exit, MoviePass was valued at $500 million. So we took that $10 million investment and 50x'd it. So
That's pretty impressive right there. I don't think people really think about those numbers of only raising 10, exiting for $500 million in 5 years. Like, super impressive. But during that time, I'm sure raising that $5 million, and I know there's a ton of almost like adaptation you have to go through during that time, right? And for those like building their businesses now, how did you pivot and like make decisions with conviction when many times you're the only one seeing what you see and others don't see that?
Anybody see the Matrix, the first Matrix? Okay, you know where Bullet Time and Neo's got a, okay. It's like that. First, you have this really great idea and you are fixed. And then a bullet comes at you. It can be market forces, it can be COVID, it can be a competitor in the space, whatever, and you dodge that bullet. And you need to be something different. And then you have to morph into something else. The beauty you have about being small is you can pivot really quickly, where the bigger a company gets, the harder. Think of a building or a vehicle. The bigger the vehicle gets, the harder it is for it to move. And so you get these challenges along the way that are just bone crushing to a big entity, or they'll write it off. Like, they can literally say that was an R&D experiment, but for you it's your whole life, right? And so, but you have to be fluid and flexible and take information and knowledge and use it very fast. When you hear something or you see a new tech emerging, play with it. Play with it. How can I use this? How can I turn this into an advantage? How can I use AI? How can I use VR? How can I use all of these things? And you want to be moving at the speed of sound. And that keeps you on the competitive edge. And also, always think of how someone's going to put you out of business. There is a great book called Only the Paranoid Survive. And you should read it. It's really, not only should you think of how your competition is going to put you out of business, but you should be thinking how you can put you out of business. Your job is to make a product that no longer needs you. There's a book that I can't recommend enough called Entrepreneur's Myth, E-Myth. E-Myth is so important because we think, and they use an analogy of a lady who's baking pies, and there's her grandmother's pie recipe, and she's baking pies, and first it's her friends are like, oh my God, this is so good. and then she sells some, and she's baking in her kitchen, and then she gets a little higher, but then she can never scale out of that, and she's exhausted because she's doing nothing but baking pies because she doesn't want to turn over the recipe, and she doesn't want anybody to do it wrong. Your job is to create a business. Think of what I'm saying is so huge. This changed my life. You need to make a business that runs without you. And I'll never forget, there was a moment where I was sitting on the beach, and I remember MoviePass was making in a day what Urban World made in a year. And I was sitting on the beach doing nothing. People signed up, they got their cards, they went to the movies. I did nothing. Once the flywheel was in place, I didn't have to do anything. We just kept the machine running, but the whole system ran itself. So remember, if you are building a business that you are the business, you can never scale. Remember, you're building a business that you get to go sit on a beach somewhere and it just does itself. But all of those pivots that we had to deal with along the way, and just read every book you can get your hands on. I constantly am listening to audiobooks. The one I just finished is, there were two I just finished which are great. One is called Extreme Ownership, which is great, and the other one is called Buy Back Your Time. Buy Back Your Time is great. Dan Martell's book, but yeah.
And I think that segues perfectly into, the title of the book, The Power of Being an Outsider. I know last night I think I heard you say something profound when someone asked you, about how did you turn what seemed to be those weaknesses into, a source of strength. And I would just love to hear you kind of talk about that power that is instilled, from birth that you talked about last night that we often see as a weakness. How do you turn that into power?
Yeah, so the second, so the book is Black Founder, and then The Hidden Power of Being an Outsider. The advantage of being an outsider is you have two unique advantages. One is no one expects you to be a threat, which is great. The expectation, we walked into AMC, and I bet you they thought we were like little mice with high-pitched voice. Yeah, we want to make, and yet they took you so unseriously. It's like, yeah, okay. Thank you very much. We covered your parking. I'll go. So they don't take you seriously. That's the first thing. It's great. That means you can do a lot of dev cycles when no one's paying attention, okay? Because they're not looking at you. That's the first advantage of being an outsider. The second is you're not strapped with the legacy debt that being inside of a corporation has, okay? Second advantage. Third, being broke means you become really efficient. There isn't somebody to take out the trash. There isn't somebody to do all these things. So you think very inexpensive ways of bubble gum and putting things together where other people have to go through, we need FCC approval, we need this approval, we need that approval, and did legal sign off on it? You're like, I just made it, right? So that's the third great thing about being an outsider. And you get to focus on something that the big boys aren't paying attention. So watch disruption. I'm going to show you how little tiny guys topple very big empires. Netflix. Netflix went and tried to get Blockbuster to buy them for $30 million. And Blockbuster laughed them out of their offices, said, mail, internet, you can't watch anything on the internet. We've got releases in all of our stores. And they were like, you won't need stores. Like, what are you talking about? We're 2 minutes for people. And Netflix knew what Blockbuster's weakness was. Remember what their opening shot was? No more late fees. Do you know why? Blockbuster had built an empire where they weren't making any money on rentals. They were all late fees. And they knew that. And it was the biggest pain point that people, hey, I'm so sorry I forgot. It's like the library book. I'm so sorry I forgot it. I'm bringing it back. And they're like, that'll be $52.95. But wait, it's only $9.99. But yes, we know, but you've had it for 3 months and our inventory, and so you kept it. And so you basically bought this, but you're charging me $60 for it. Yes. And they had your credit card on file, and there was nothing you could do. No more late fees. Drop it in the mail. It come surprise, just come surprise and delight, just showing up in your mailbox. And keep it, in the second tagline, keep it as long as you want. No more late fees. There's only one Blockbuster left. It's not really a store, but you can rent it out at Airbnb and stay in it. But that's it. They toppled an empire. How many people remember MySpace? Okay, let's go back to MySpace. Facebook wasn't first. It wasn't even close to first. AOL had community chat rooms and stuff like that. Then MySpace started doing it, and MySpace decided it wasn't going to be careful about what was getting posted, and all of a sudden this inappropriate child stuff started showing up. But Zuckerberg knew he had learned from some of those mistakes, tweaked it, and Facebook becomes the empire and MySpace falls, right? Hilton, Airbnb. Who would ever want to rent out a room in their house? Uber. Who would ever want to drive somebody in the back seat of their car? Spotify. Why pay for something when you have radio for free? Right? These things don't make sense at the beginning, and that's why the big empires go, that doesn't make any sense. Who cares? No one would care. But a very small group of people care. And then the next thing you know, so when you're working on something, never underestimate your first 300 customers. Everybody see the movie 300? This is Sparta, right? You're Spartans. And the 300 placed at the right place at the right time is everything. And you are the 300. And so remember, that is so important. Because that's how empires fall. Someone like you comes along and makes something that they're all like, do you know who we are? We're Blockbuster. We've got locations all over the world. What are you? And that thing you flicked off into the parking lot is going to come back and destroy you. And that's who you are. So that's the power of being in no empire. Look at IBM. Why is IBM not the top chip manufacturer in the world? No one was paying attention to Taiwan or NVIDIA. Who was paying attention to gaming chips? No one. Chips takes over empires.
Love that. I mean, I think it's so important with that outsider mindset. And I'm going to take a couple of questions from the audience. So a few questions. So if you have a question, get ready with those questions. But before we segue to that, Stacy, I want to talk to you, like, where is MoviePass today, right? Give us a rundown of that. And then I think you talked about this a few weeks ago when we talked of, like, building an inclusive culture. So can you talk through, like, inclusive culture, how you hire today, and how that's kind of really helping your company continue to grow and be sustainable?
So first, I'll do the second one first. I don't even think of it as inclusive. I think of it as hiring smart people, right? I'm like, who's the smartest one? Who has the most passion? I just was interviewing a CTO. 3 of them. Watch how stupid this is. I have a documentary. I have a book. You meet me. You watch the trailer of the movie. You have not read. It's an audio book. You can just listen to it. You haven't read the book. You're sitting in front of me. You have not downloaded the MoviePass app, and you haven't been to the movies in a year. right? You failed. So it's not flattery, it's you better know the source and what universe you're stepping in to understand where I'm coming from, you know? So why are you not going to give yourself those advantages? And so to me, it's not even I'm trying to be diverse and include people. I'm just hiring smart and people who love movies and they love going. The other part to the question about
And before you get to the other part, one thing I want to pull out of that, Stacy, because I think it's so important, because like many times as a startup founder, you're looking for talent. You're looking for the technical skills, the product skills. But one of the interview questions you told me you asked everybody you interview is, what have you seen lately? Because you're in the movie industry, so you care about film and entertainment, and you want to see their perspective, what kind of person they are through that lens, in a sense. And so I think that's the question that's so important, you know, based on what industry you're building in, and making sure you hire people who are passionate about the industry, not only have the technical skills.
Look, I'm a fan of surf culture, skateboard culture, kind of growing up at a time when these cultures kind of came to be. They were garage businesses, but when you see Burton boards or Billabong or Vans still to this day. I remember Fast Times at Ridgemont High, the first time seeing Jeff Spicoli wearing Vans, and it was like, what are those, man? It was like, so it's 30, 40 years from now, there's still very popular brands that kids are wearing as if they're brand new. How did they build those cultures? And I've never been on a surfboard. I have bought many surf brands. But when they originally hired, they just hired surfers. Or they hired skateboarders. And it didn't matter if you knew how to go build, polyurethane tires or not. But did you have passion for how that thing felt beneath your feet? So when people come in my office, they think they're going to talk about their resume and what school they went to and all this. If any of you ever come talk to me because you're interested, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. I'm going to say, what was the last movie you went to see? Where was it? What part of the theater did you sit in? Are you a center person, or do you like the aisles? And did you buy your ticket online, or did you buy it at the theater? And did you use an app? And then we're going to get into what your favorite movies are. Because if you can't give me that, you can't be where we are. You cannot, when you're this young in the culture, you can't hire people who don't surf or skateboard or know about it. You have to have such passion around it. So Elon Musk says you can hire smart people, but you can't hire passion, and it just needs to be there. When you look at when that rocket went back and landed the way it landed, NASA couldn't figure out how to not throw an entire rocket in the ocean every time. NASA, smartest people on earth. A bunch of kids, basically engineers right out of school, figured out how to use gyroscopes and land that thing on a barge in the ocean. Why are you throwing away a rocket every single time? You dump it in the ocean. So, but what was it? A lot of late nights, a lot of pizza, and a lot of passion. Let's go to Mars, right? They want Mars on their tombstone. And that's the kind of stuff you hire for. And so when you're talking to people, look for the passion. Don't look for, oh, well, he's a really good accountant. Take the bad accountant who is really passionate about where you're trying to go, because you're like Christopher Columbus and you got to convince a bunch of people to follow you off the edge of the earth, which is what they believed. At a certain point, there's a cliff and you're going to fall off it, and you're going to go find out if there's really a cliff or not. So you're convincing a bunch of crazy people to follow you, and you need people who are crazy about what you're crazy about. Then it's easier. Then you're not crazy anymore. I forgot what your first question was.
Just where is MoviePass today? And, that, and we'll segue into one or two questions from the audience.
So we bought the company back. If you haven't seen the movie, watch it. It's much better than my short stories. But the punchline towards the end of the movie is I was able to buy the company back for $140,000. So let me tell you how that happened. So it went into bankruptcy. They went through $250 million in less than a year, went bankrupt, mothballed the whole thing, and the bankruptcy courts had put MoviePass and the other assets up for auction, but they were listed under the company that bought us, which was HMNY. Well, no one was checking for HMNY, and they didn't realize that MoviePass got put up for auction, and so no one bidded on it. So I found out, and I called up the bankruptcy courts, and I said, did anybody bid on MoviePass? I said, well, no. I said, well, I would like to put in a bid. And he said, well, the beginning bid is $250,000. I said, I only have $150,000. And he said, well, I'm not sure we can take that. I said, I happen to read in the laws that you have to accept any possible offer, and you need to do that to give something back to the creditors. So they actually list that the company is being bought. So let's imagine there was a building that was in disrepair and someone's going to buy it. So they put it out in the public spectrum because the public lost their money. They put it in the public spectrum, and basically if anyone wants to push back against the buy or competitively bid against it, those two things can happen when they put it back up, and they have to list it in a paper or something. For 21 days, I held my breath. I didn't sleep, and no one gave a competitive bid, and I got the company back for $140,000. So that was, and then we relaunched it, and then in 2023, we had our first profitable year in the history of the company, and just with relaunch, we went from 0 to $15 million in ARR overnight. And with the changes that I was trying to tell them to do in 2016, we deployed it, and we're already operating at a 23% profit margin. So I told them what to do to get the plane to fly right, but they didn't want to hear me. So now, Mitch, one of the guys in the movie, just pled guilty last week to federal charges because what they did in order to stop money from hemorrhaging was they took out the cancellation buttons so no one could cancel the service, and they started to charge you even when you canceled. And so they were also found moving money across state lines to cover, bad bills. And so they were facing 20 years each on 4 charges. And so Mitch pled guilty last week, and Ted is in jail still waiting sentencing. So, but we're doing great.
All right,
questions?
In the back.
So you say that you're profitable, but how are you adjusting and adapting to the culture now? Because there aren't a lot of moviegoers. So, and it's moved in the way of streaming. So how are you marrying that?
I love that question. So here's real data, right? That's not the truth. Number one, right now, movie going is the #1 out-of-home entertainment activity in the world. Today, 44% of the global population goes to the movies at least once a year. All of the streamers ran and chased Netflix, and in the last 6 months, Apple committed $1 billion to theatrical. Amazon committed $1 billion to theatrical. Netflix committed $1 billion to theatrical. Because here's the simple math. For every movie someone watches on streaming, the streamer gets 10 cents. Every movie that someone watches in theaters, they get $10. So maintaining the theatrical window is still more profitable. But where we come in, where if we can get to scale, if you can own that through subscription, it's even better than getting one ticket at a time, which really it's the subscription. The streamers aren't great because they're streaming, because streaming is the same thing HBO was doing. The difference is you don't have the cable, you're getting it from satellite. So we already had that business model. But what's different is the subscription is the thing that Wall Street likes, because I don't need to reacquire the customer every time. So really it's so the other thing is movie going today in the US is 10 times larger than all sporting events combined. We go to 1 billion movies every year in the US alone, and we only go to 120 million sporting events. In a 4-day weekend of a movie that makes $100 million, that movie will have had more people go to it than the entire NFL season. 4 days of one movie equal to the entire NFL season. So when you hear no one's going to movies, don't believe it. It's not true. Yeah, Terrell.
Stacy, so first thing I want to say is your story is impactful, and you're very. I'm just amazed by your story. Should I say that first of all?
It's because of my good hair, man. You know, it's the hair.
I'm trying to get it out the right way, but when you talk about mentorship, right?
Yeah.
And then you said about you being a nerd, but I think we need to turn that into being positive, because it's somebody in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, or Louisville, Kentucky right now, a young person that they didn't make the basketball team, they didn't make the football team, but they have this imagination of they want to create. And I hope that you can reach these young people, because I feel like if they heard your story, that they would be focused on their craft. And so that's one thing I want to say. And then another thing I want to say real quick is about, I'm a TV show person. I used to be a movie show person all the time, but now TV shows has gotten hold. But if somebody comes to your company and they tell you and say, hey, and they tell you about these TV shows that they like, and they're very passionate, would you think about hiring them over someone that may tell you, oh, yeah, I like to sit in the middle row. I like to sit, I like all these movies, but this person is really passionate, can tell you to the T about these different TV shows.
If that person's up against somebody who goes to the movies, I'm gonna take the person who goes to the movies if their talent is equal, because watching something at home, look at it this way. It's like if you ran a football stadium and you wanted to hire someone to work and manage your stadium, would you hire someone who told you, I watch football every week on TV, but I don't go to stadiums? So to me, it's like there's nuances. The long bathrooms, the concessions, the peanuts on the floor. How's it going to get cleaned up? What do I do about people smoking? Is it an open air? Is it closed? Is there air conditioning? Those stuff that's not in your house. Like, you don't know. There's nuances you're going to miss. And so to me, they don't understand what's happening on the ground in a theater, and that's part of what's like on a Friday night. And so that's 50% of what we're dealing with in our business. And so that's what I think. And your first comment, thank you for those kind words. And that's why I wanted to write the book, that if there's only one curse word in the whole book, but I wrote it with high school students in mind, that it was obtainable, that they could see, this is why it says Black Founders. You can see that founders look like you too. And that's why we put the book out.
Cool. one more. Right in front.
I want to talk a little bit more about like how you ended up. Sorry, I know this is like a funeral part, but like as a founder, how I know you guys had to exit and
HM&Y, yeah.
Yeah. So what was the setup that they were able to like remove you not just from your position as CEO, but also from the board, right?
Yeah.
Like, what was the makeup and what are things that you would advise a founder, right, when you're setting up your boards or like when you incorporate or even when you exit, right? If you still want to kind of be within your company, things to how do you restructure, how would you set up? Because I know like with Mark Zuckerberg, he has like two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, there's two worlds. All employees answer to the board, even the CEO, and you have an employment contract. And so the board can determine, there's two passageways. One is what they call a bad actor clause. Does anybody remember when the CEO of Lululemon said, "We don't want fat women in our pants"? Do you guys remember that? Okay. The board said, bye-bye. Now, he still had his stock, his voting, but the board had the ability to fire him, or you get caught up in a scandal or something. You have an employment contract, and if you violate that, or it's up and the board decides not to renew it, that's well within the board's right. In theory, you're supposed to have a board that has enough people off it and on it that it has outside points of views, but what founders often do is they try and stack the board. And you try and stack it with friendlies that if a shitstorm comes down, you got people who will keep you in place. So that's one part. Second part is Zuck and Bezos and those guys at a certain point were rocking so hard that they were able to negotiate certain voting structures that gives them more votes. And because it's like, well, do you want me to stay? Because if you want me to stay, I want these votes. And that ensures, so when Facebook ran into a lot of problems with advertising, and this is right before they made the shift to the metaverse, Facebook was in trouble. Facebook was starting to decline. Your grandmother's on Facebook, but the teenagers were leaving. Everybody's going to TikTok. And the writing was on the wall for Zuckerberg. And there can be like Carl Icahn and others who can, like they just tried to do it with Disney again. So you can get these investors that go in and they try and cause a ruckus and force the CEO out. So when you have the power, you want to get as much voting power as possible. But in a sense, the staff answers to the board answers to the shareholders if you're publicly traded. If not, the board is that line until you do become publicly traded. So anybody can get fired in theory. And with us, the board had shifted where Hamay and I had 2 votes. So the board, it was three seats. Hamay and I had 2, and Chris Kelly had 1. When the new money came in, it shifted to 5, and Chris Kelly said, I want 2 seats, and I want Mitch to have a seat, and then me and Hamay each had 1, so we were outvoted. And that's what happened, so they voted us out, and that's how it happened.
All right, Stacy, I know we are coming up on time, so I just want to say thank you so much for coming to this community, coming to Louisville, and sharing your story. And, Rick and I are big fans of yours, and we're wishing you much success, and thank you again. Let's give him a big round of applause.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
All right, if you already have your registration on email confirmation, bring it to me. I have a book for you. If you don't have one and you're looking to purchase the book, come find Ricky or I. They're $25, so we can either cash or cash out. So thank you again. We still have the space for a little bit, so network, grab some food, grab a drink, and thank you again.
Thanks, you guys.